So we're going to skip me because most of you guys came to my talk earlier this morning, right? Who was here earlier today? Okay, so, all right, some of you guys who don't know who I am, I'll just say real quick. I teach and give talks at conferences. I teach locally, or teach at a local community college where I'm based up in Silicon Valley, and I do corporate training for clients. This has all been part of my career through all this time, even though I was a software engineer, but I do teach. I write, so if you guys are Python, then one book, my most well-known book is that one. And then I'm an engineer, so I was one of the original engineers that helped build the Mill like 20 years ago, or almost 20 years ago. So that was probably my one big claim to fame. And currently I'm a developer advocate at Google, and my job is to explain to developers how to integrate their apps with Google technologies. Okay? So I love coming to DevFest. I actually have a shirt, a DevFest shirt, okay, from back in the day. It's a great time to get everybody together, to get the community talking, learn about new technologies, and then coding together. So I think it's very important, and we're very happy to support these events. The most important thing is, how many people like to make money? Who wants to make money fast? Okay, so that's the subject of this talk today. I want to make you guys think about something slightly different than maybe you're not used to, because, you know, there's a lot of sexy things out there. There's Firebase out there, there's Android out there, there's Cloud out there, there's a lot of exciting things, and these are all tools that are great to help you build and make your app viral, and it'll just go crazy, right? Progressive web apps and all these kind of things. There's a lot of new technologies to help you do that. However, the one thing is that you have to sort of rely on having individual users pick up on your app and make it go viral. So that's the harder part. With apps, it's a little bit different because you have the power of G Suite behind you, and that includes all of these tools, not just, you know, doc sheets and not just doc sheets and slides. All right. Of course, Drive is storing everything, but you have all these other things like Calendar and Gmail and Hangouts. These are all part of the entire thing. So you can actually write code against that, and if you write code that helps kind of make data work between the different apps and you know, help with collaboration and build more integrations, perhaps with your HR system, your payroll system. You just got to remember that there's a lot of G Suite users. Okay, when I say make money fast, it means that instead of hoping that your app goes viral to the consumer audience, there are companies out there that you can get the entire company using your app. You only need to go viral with 1 or 2 companies, not 1 or 2 billion users, you know what I'm saying? If you run an app that becomes popular in the Google Apps marketplace and a domain admin installs your app for all of their employees, guess what? Your number of users just went from like 10, 20, 100 to, you know, 5,000, 10,000, 40,000, or even more, right? Because it's large, you know, Google Apps or G Suite has a very large user base, okay? And not just companies, but also schools. Right, there's a lot of schools that use Google Apps because, you know, we don't charge any money for it. So a lot of schools have picked up on this, and it's just much easier for them to have the kids doing their homework using Google Doc sheets and slides. So yeah, it's the next generation of users. So if you can go viral with an app in the G Suite land, that may be sort of a very long, prosperous tail for you to chase down. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why I'm talking about this. And speaking of the apps, the Google, it used to be the Google Apps Marketplace, but now I have to say G Suite Marketplace. So these are basically software apps that help companies be more successful, like maybe merging all of your messaging things together, telephones, instant messaging, your Yammer, your Twitter, all those internally, or maybe a CRM, or maybe something that connects to payroll, right? These things are all like things that companies need to have. Right? So drop a question in the question box, and then I'll get that. So anyway, so and like Asana helps, you know, make you know, enterprise users more productive in their work by, you know, doing more agile development techniques and helping projects stay on track. And if you look at the number of users, these numbers, it's not like 1, 10, or 20. I mean, look, this smart sheet has like 5.3 million users. Can you imagine going from 1 to 5.4 million users, kind of just like right away, right? So that's why I want you to have perhaps think slightly different than writing an app that goes viral in consumer land and making this another possibility that you can consider. Hey, I'm all for going for both too, right? There's nothing wrong with making more money, okay? So that's why I talk about the G Suite apps, because it's kind of like almost an untapped market. You think, oh yeah, G Suite, Google Apps, people just use doc sheet slides and maybe Gmail on calendar, right? But that's not all there is. You can actually make them play well together, right? You know, this morning I talked about AppScript, which is a way to actually, make the data move well together, but that doesn't mean you can't write separate apps that can show up in the apps marketplace or the G Suite marketplace as well too. Okay? All right, so as I say, the code samples will be in Python, so Python's my thing, so if it's not, then just pretend it's pseudocode. Okay, then you'll be safe. All right? And by the way, we support most major languages. It's not just Python. So if you write apps in any of these other languages, Java, JavaScript, .NET, C, Swift, PHP, Python, Java for server-side, Java for Android, Dart, Go, or Node, JavaScript for Node, and Ruby, those are all supported as well. You can write any tool in any of those languages and talk to our APIs. Okay, this morning I talked about AppScript, which is JavaScript only, but when you use our generic REST APIs, it opens the door to a much wider developer audience. All right? So just don't think it's Python. But Python is great pseudocode because I cannot cram the same amount of code, in Java on one screen that I can in Python. All right, so that's why Python's great pseudocode, besides it being my thing. Okay, so let's go through and talk about all the major G Suite APIs. We'll start with slides first. The reason why I start with slides is because we've never had an API for slides. And so we did a sort of like a pre-announce at Google I/O back in May. And we had trusted testers in an early access program where people got to build some stuff, and we got our launch partners out of it, and then at the beginning of the month, well, I guess we're in December now, but almost a month ago, we launched the actual API to make it generally available. So you guys can access it today. All right, we've never had an API for slides before, and this is really exciting. And the reason being that, a lot of times you have data that lives in a database or in some spreadsheet, but you want to make it more presentable to management or to customers, right? So using the Slides API, you can take that data out of the spreadsheet, out of the database. You can have you can create a beautiful slide presentation out of it, right? So that's pretty important. It helps make data more visually appealing. So that's one of the use cases for the Slides API. Another thing you can do is you can have customized presentations. Like, let's say I created sort of like a template slide deck that has like placeholder variables for, customer name, customer contact information, company logo. And what you can do is, based on the data that's sitting, again, in a database or in a spreadsheet, you can actually create multiple slide presentations, each for a different customer or a different client or whatnot. Right? All by having one template which you have all your UX people work on to make it really pretty, really flashy. As long as you just have your variables in there, you can write code and talk to the Slides API to have those slide decks be rendered. Okay, and of course you can name them all differently so you know which customer they're for. All right? So to help kind of get you excited about it, we created a Markdown slides generator. So if you write an entire slide presentation in Markdown, you can run this little Node.js tool, and it'll output an entire slide deck based on that content. So that's a good way to kind of get you started. It is in JavaScript, all right? So anyway, so give it a shot. So that's the Slides API. Let's look at a little bit of Python as an example. Okay, so I'm not going to walk through all the code, but I'm going to point out the major bits, because regardless of what language you use, you're going to have to go through those little bits anyway. Okay. So what I'm going to do in this sample is I'm going to have a template deck. It's sitting in my drive folder, and it's got a placeholder for like a company logo in the upper left corner, and it's got a title, a generic title. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call the Google Drive API and copy that file. All right. So first I'm going to search for the template file. So that's what line 22 is. My new deck is going to be called the Google Slides API demo, and then I'm going to actually call the Drive API copy. I'm going to copy that slide deck, and then I'm going to give it the ID of the file that I'm going to copy, and then I'm going to execute it, and then I'm going to get the ID of the brand new slide deck that was created. So now I have a copy of it, an exact copy of that template slide deck. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and grab those slide objects. So I don't think I have a sample image of it, but you can just imagine company logo in the upper left corner, and then a kind of a text variable for the actual slide presentation name. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to search for all the objects on this one slide, and I'm going to search for the rectangle, which is the placeholder. I have an image placeholder in the upper left corner. I also have a text box. I don't care about the text box. I just want the image. So I'm looking at all the elements on that page, and I'm going to grab the rectangle. As soon as I find the rectangle, I stop. I don't care about the image. The variable name. I just care about the placeholder, and I'll tell you why I'm doing this in a moment. Second thing is, well, that image that I just searched for, I'm going to replace with a corporate icon, and the corporate icon is just some logo that probably the Google Slides logo. So I'm going to search for that file. I found the image file, and then what I do is I do a little bit of magic, and I create an authorized URL for the whole file, okay, for the whole image file. Because in order to create an image on a slide, I need to have a sort of a complete URL that will get me an image, like all the bits of an image, okay? And because it's sitting on my drive file, I have to have authorization to get access to that file. So I have to append the OAuth token to the end of that URL so that I can go, so that the Slides API can actually go and read that file from my drive. Does that make sense? Okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to execute 3 commands with the Slides API. So the way the Slides API works is you create a JSON payload. So it's basically an array of requests. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, look for this text placeholder variable, which is using the standard template variable format with 2 curly braces and then the name of the slide deck. So I'm just going to replace it with hello world. So I'm doing a global search and replace on the title to get the title on there. And now I have to replace that image placeholder rectangle with the actual company logo. So that's the second command. I have the URL of the company icon, okay, and then I'm going to basically put it on the page object, which is there's only one page in this slide presentation. And the most important thing is the size of the transform, okay? Because the Slides API is so powerful, it lets you rotate, it lets you resize, it lets you transform. You basically have to do the equivalent of linear algebra and provide all the numbers so that the Slides API can render your image. Because I'm lazy, I put that image placeholder upper left-hand corner with the exact same dimensions that I want my corporate icon to fit into. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to steal its size and its transform, so I don't have to do linear algebra to calculate that out. And so that corporate icon is going to drop right over exactly where that image placeholder is, and it's going to be automatically resized to fit into that rectangle. You guys get that? And once I do that, I no longer need that image placeholder, so I delete it. So in this array, I have 3 requests. Global search and replace the text, create the image object, and then delete the image placeholder. And then all it takes is one call to slides, that presentation, that batch update, and it'll execute all 3 of these requests one at a time. Okay, and that's it. So that's how you use the Slides API. I think that's the only example I have. Nope, I have one more. So this is a video that I just published on Wednesday. So this is only 4 days old. So what this does is it takes data from a Google Sheet and it does 2 things. It generates one slide by grabbing all the cell data from the sheet. It'll create a table in a slide and fill in the table with all the cells that are in the spreadsheet. So that's one thing that it does. The other thing is that this spreadsheet has a pie chart in it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a brand new slide and I'm going to import that chart directly into a slide. But I'm going to do it in a way, I don't know if I have that variable here. Please let me here somewhere. Okay, right down here. It's a little hard to see because it's not focused really well, but there's this linking mode down here. And what that linking mode does is that, let's say I update the sheet, right, the data. Okay, so the data I used in this particular video was like for toy orders. So I have a spreadsheet with toy orders in it. If you go and change your toy orders, that affects the pie chart, right? So if you put linked here, what it will do is it'll make it so that you can actually update your slide's image that's a copy of the chart with the newest data. doesn't happen automatically, but you can either do it with a call to the API to refresh the chart so it gets the latest, or it shows up on the user interface. So that if you have a user that's editing that slide deck, there's a little refresh icon right where that chart has been imported, and when you press that, it'll grab the latest chart from the sheet. So that's the magic with the linking mode here. Okay. So the main idea is you can actually just see the commands. I don't know why this is so out of focus. Okay. It's kind of odd. But anyway, create blank slide for the table. Create a blank slide for the chart. And then add a title and subtitle to the front page, which is the image, the title page. And then grab the slide ID for the table slide, and then the chart slide that I just added. And then let's grab the ID for the text box that's on the table slide. And then I'm going to create a new table on that table slide, because these are going to be where I fill in all the cells from the spreadsheet. So I create a table, and I rows, J columns, and then I put a title on that same slide. And then I loop through all the rows, and then I loop through all the cells, so basically all the rows, and then all the columns, and I just basically copy one at a time, one spreadsheet cell into one slides table cell, one after another. So this is basically a double for loop, so that's why there's a 4i and 4j. One is to loop through all the rows, the other is to loop through all the columns of each row. And then the last thing is, and then I insert the text right here. So there's one insert text call for every single one of those cells. And then I create the chart here. This is pseudocode that I chopped off because there's a lot of information. Call it batch update for slides, and then it's done. So both of these examples are videos, and you'll have full access to this, the source code, because I have blog posts that dive deep into each of the source examples. And so I walk you through line by line what each app does, and you can just copy that and just run it and then modify it for your own apps. But this is in Python, so again, if you're coding in a different language, just use it as pseudocode, because you're going to have to do the same thing. Regardless of what language you use, you're still going to have to build a JSON array, an array of JSON structures to send to the API. Okay? All right. So I don't know why again this color is so odd. It's very greenish.
Yeah, I got that.
Better? Okay, all right, good. All right, now let's talk about Google Sheets. So Sheets launched its latest API at Google I/O in May. At I/O in May, and this one is way better than existing previous versions of the API. Previous versions of the API had a lot of limitations as to what you can and can't do. And it was really only good for reading spreadsheets, not writing to them. Okay, and so this changed with the next generation. So I'll tell you what I mean. Okay, so what happened was the previous versions of the API, like V3 and older, they could only do the things that are not bolded. They could only create new sheets within spreadsheets and add data to sheets, and of course read sheets. Those are the three things that it could do. Very boring, okay? But now, with the version 4 of the API, you can pretty much do in a program what you can do while sitting in front of the slides user interface, like creating new spreadsheets from scratch, setting rows to be frozen, doing text and number formatting, doing cell validation, adjusting column sizes, applying formulas, building pivot tables, and creating charts. Okay, so whatever you can think of doing while you're sitting in front of Google Sheets, you can pretty much do programmatically now. So it's much more powerful than before. Okay. And this leads to other types of apps now, like some people like to have, they have a lot of data sitting in a database, and they just want to create nice spreadsheet flavored reports. And so you will have data flowing from left to right. Another thing that people do is they actually like to use Sheets as their primary input interface. And so data can go the other way, because you can have your spreadsheet be the source, but then just to back it up and play it safe, you can have data flowing you can have the data flowing into the database too. Okay? Or some companies do a little bit of both, all right, which is pretty cool. So if you are new to the Sheets API, you haven't tried it yet, we created a code lab for you, which is pretty awesome. And it's also Node, just because we think JavaScript is a very general language for people to use. And basically, this is where the toy orders thing comes in. Okay, so there's a toy orders relational database, And what you're going to do is you're going to write a customized reporting tool based on that, and it will automatically generate nice sheets from it. So give it a shot, and then you'll totally understand like where this toy order stuff comes from in all of my videos, because I have like at least 3 videos that use the toy orders database. So anyway, so that's where it came from. Okay, so let's see some code. So how do I like freeze the top row? You ever drag that top row down so that even though you scroll the other rows up, that top row stays there, right? So that's a frozen row. And then I'm gonna bold it. So those are the 2 things I'm gonna do. Just like the slides API, you have to create an array of JSON requests. Okay, so the first one is, let's see, update sheet properties, which is I wanna set my frozen row count to 1, which is the first one. Okay, and then to bold, I just say, hey, sheet ID is 0, that's the first sheet that you get. Row is 0, end row is 1, so that's basically the very first row, so that's all of row number 1. Okay? And then what I'm going to do is for every cell in that row, I'm going to change its user enter format dot text format dot bold flag to true. And then I tell it with fields that that is the only field that I'm going to roll some of the challenges they ran into. So that was important to know. And then most recently, we announced something called Team Drives in 2016. So, if you work at a company and you guys do all of your documents in Google Apps G Suite, problems happen when that person leaves the company. Like, who owns that file? Because you want to delete the user, so you don't want them to get access to it anymore. But you have to transfer every single file one at a time to another user or to their manager or something, right? Problematic. So we announced Team Drives, which is where you have a drive folder that is not owned by a person, but it's owned by an organization instead. So we are in the early access program for that. So just keep an eye out for that coming soon. Okay. So that's Drive. Let's take a look at a quick code sample to kind of get you used to it. Pretty short one. This is basically listing all your files in your topmost Google Drive folder. So your scope is basically, I'm just going to read just the metadata. One quick story I like to talk about scopes is the scope is the permission that you're asking your users for. How many of you guys, when you install an app, you see all these permissions that you have to allow this app to access, and it just makes you go, why does this app, which is a mapping app, need to access my contacts, right? Doesn't that kind of irritate you a little bit? Okay, so the good practice that we always tell our users is always try to use the minimum amount of scope that you need so that your app works. If I don't need to write to their Drive folder, if I don't need to read their actual Drive files, then you don't use those scopes. You just ask for the minimum, which is I only want read-only, and I don't even care about your file's contents. I just want to read the metadata out of it, like your file name and the file type. I don't need to ask you for those permissions, so I'm only asking for this, which is drive.readonly.metadata, which is a very restrictive scope. Okay? But that's all I need for this app. And if you do that, then maybe your users will be less pissed at you for asking for these all crazy permissions, right? So it's always a good practice to do that. So that's all we're doing here. So we create an endpoint to the Drive API, version 3, and I'm just going to list all my files, and then for every file, I'm just going to print the name and its file type. That's it. Right? Very simple. You can get started. This is also in a video, and I also have a blog post that walks through all the code one line at a time. All right, Gmail. So for developers, we launched a new feature in July, and that is the settings endpoints. Before July, what you could not do in the past with the Gmail API was to access user settings, like your email signatures, your vacation responder, your filters, and things like that, and now you can. Okay, so that's pretty important. That was a big deal. So I have a video that maybe that one hasn't come out yet. I think maybe this is the one that's coming for this week, which is basically a video that shows you how you can modify your email signature programmatically, so you can add like mini quotes or something funny or the latest news, so that you always keep your email recipients on their toes. Now, why is this useful? Some companies have asked, we want all of our employees to have a uniform email signature. How do we make this happen? Well, this is exactly how you make it happen. You can actually write this app and make it work for your entire domain. Some people want to have like the latest product newsletter link down in your signature too. Or maybe you change your company logo or something like that, right? So that's one big use case for why we added this feature in July. So that's one thing. Second thing is we launched a new metadata scope in November. So that was also just a couple of weeks ago. This scope people have been asking for a while, which is, remember how I just told you about for Google Drive? I only want to read and I only want to read information about your files. I don't want to read the files. I just want the metadata. Well, people have asked the same thing about email. I don't want to read people's emails, but I want to get an idea of like, what are the typical sizes of emails that they get? You know, what are the subject lines, just to see, you know, how many people complain about our products or whatever. So it's just, I only want access to the Gmail email message metadata. Okay, so that was just launched. We haven't publicly announced it yet, but it's in the documentation, so it's there. We just haven't told people about it. So I'll probably be doing something about that soon. And then we're going to deprecate the old admin SDK email settings in July because, you know, basically this replaced that. So being able to change settings used to be part of the admin SDK, but now since the Gmail API has it, there's no need for the admin SDK to maintain their older version, which doesn't do all this stuff that the new Gmail API settings does. Okay. All right, so here is a sample, and this video is already out. I did this one about a year ago. So this is where, let's say I have a Gmail address specifically for being on mailing lists, and I just want to maybe check all the most chatty threads, like what are the most important things people are talking about. So in this example, I'm looking for all email threads that only have more than 2 messages. If it has fewer than 2, that means nobody's interested, nobody's responding, so I'm not even going to look at them. So this is how it works. So I have a read-only scope here, because I'm only going to read. Now I can actually use the new metadata scope, so I'm going to change this example to do gmail.metadata, whatever. I don't know if it's gmail.metadata read-only, but whatever it is, I'm going to change it to that, because I'm not looking at their actual email content here. I'm just looking at the headers. So create an endpoint to the Gmail API, grab all my threads, all my most recent, I don't know, whatever the default is, 25 or 100 threads. And then for every thread, okay, give me all information about that thread. So find out how many messages are in it. If there's at least 2 messages, okay, then I start processing it. Otherwise, if there's fewer than 3, then I just ignore it. So I'm going to go into the payload of the message, and I'm going to look at all the headers. And I'm going to look for all the messages that have more than 2 threads that have a subject line. Because if it doesn't have a subject line, it's not going to help me figure out what this thread is about, right? So if there's a subject line and there's more than 2 messages, then print out the subject line and then tell me how many messages are in there to tell me how chatty this thread is. Okay? So as you can see, these examples are very, very short and shows you how you can talk to a Google API. So if you've never written code against Google APIs, that's what the next session is about, which is where I lead you hands-on through some of these examples. Okay? All right, now let's talk about Calendar. So Calendar hasn't had many developer updates in 2016. I don't think there are any. I believe all of these are consumer-related announcements, which means only the mobile app or the web app. I don't think they have anything new for the developer side. But there's nothing wrong with looking at an example, which is how do you add an event to Calendar? So this is, believe it or not, my most highly viewed video, which is how do you add events to somebody's Google Calendar? I'm surprised because it sounds like something that is very general, doesn't sound exciting or anything like that, but anyway, it's the highest viewed one, so let's talk about it. I need read-write access to Calendar, so that's what that scope is. I'm going to be in West Coast time zone. I'm going to have dinner for friends next January. And then I'm going to email it to invite a couple friends. And then I just call insert with this data, which is in JSON format, and then to confirm, I basically save the return value and print out the receipt. That's what I added to the calendar. And then the only thing new is actually the event ID. So that is something you did not have before, but everything else is exactly what you wanted in the calendar. And then hopefully the next video that we make a calendar will be how to modify existing calendar events. That's on tap. I don't have an ETA for that video yet, but based on this video and this source code, you should be able to come up with it on your own. Okay? So adding things to calendar, very useful. The reason is, I guess maybe one of the reasons why is, let's say you were to write something like a new open table or a new travel reservation app. The thing is, when people book a dining reservation or travel somewhere, is that after they're done with your app, guess what they have to do? They have to close your app, then they have to go into Google Calendar and manually enter it in, right? That's horrible. Why can't you just do it for them? That way they'll be happier. All right, I know some developers are like, oh, well, doesn't Gmail automatically do that? Yes, if you turn it on. So Gmail has a feature where if you turn on the feature, it will read through your email, and if it sees like a plane reservation from Delta or American United, it'll actually add that to your calendar. But guess what? What if, plans change? What if you change your flight? Well, guess what? After you change your flight, you're going to have 2 calendar entries, and one of them is going to be wrong. That's also not a great experience. So you want to control things from end to end. So if you were writing a travel reservation app, you will know what this ID is. You will save that ID into some database for that user, for that transaction, and if they change their travel, you can actually go and modify that calendar event. So you don't have 2 entries and one of them is wrong, right? So you give your users a better experience if you control everything, right? So I guess that was the main motivation for that particular video. Okay, everybody kind of understand that, right? Okay, I want you guys to be successful and making lots of money. So that's why we're having this conversation, right? All right, so AppScript. So those of you who did not come to my talk earlier today, this is just a quick couple of slides on it. The announcements we had this year, we had the execution API that came out last year, about a year and a quarter ago. It feels like it was just yesterday, but that's actually really powerful, and it basically allows external apps to call into existing AppScript apps because AppScript runs in its own execution environment. And then this July, we added Android add-ons, which is pretty awesome because now you can have add-ons that run under Android, okay? So of course, those won't mean anything to you if you don't know what AppScript is, so let's just talk about it really quickly. So what AppScript is, it gives you the ability to get access to Google Apps and G Suite data. You write JavaScript code, but the JavaScript code doesn't run in the browser, it runs in Google's cloud, and it gives you access to things. So in this example, in your Hello World, I could have this AppScript, this little bit of JavaScript tied to a Google spreadsheet. Okay, so in the Google Sheet, I can say, give me the current active sheet, give me the cell that's A1, and then once I have that cell object, I can call it set value method and put words hello world or put that string into cell A1. Okay, very powerful because it actually works. And so I have an intro video to show you how to do that. So that's just the beginning. So another example that I told people about earlier this morning was, well, what can you do with an address? Well, guess what? You can take an address, you can read it out of that spreadsheet, and then you can talk to Google Maps and say, hey, Google Maps, give me a new map and put a pin on that address. And boom, there it is, right? You can actually get access to, so even though Google Maps is not part of Google Apps or G Suite, Google AppScript gives you access to not only apps data, but also other Google services like Maps. And even better is, if you also add Gmail in there, you can also email that map to a friend. So you grab that address from the spreadsheet, you put a pin on that address with a brand new map, you get its URL, and then you email that to your friend so that they know where to go for dinner. Right? Hopefully this is like, I'm trying to give you motivational ideas as to what you guys can do. Okay? So, and look, I'm talking in 4 lines of code, I am talking to 3 different Google products. Google Sheets, Google Maps, and Gmail. In 4 lines of code. It's very, very powerful. Okay? So that's AppScript. Good, kind of a long time. And then lastly, which is kind of like the least exciting, I shouldn't say that. If this is recorded, then my colleagues will say, what are you talking about? I work on that team. It's exciting. And it is, because this is how you manage your entire domain. So if your company or your customer's company use Google Apps, you have to be able to add, I have 120 new employees starting on Monday. Do you really want to add them one at a time if you're an admin? No, you want to programmatically do it, like from a CSV or some Google Sheet, right? So that's what the Admin SDK does. It helps you manage your Google Apps or your G Suite domain with lots of different tools. They'll help you with managing, adding users, adding resources like printers and meeting rooms. But it also has a reports API that you can go and find out usage. Like, how many people lost their Android phones, their corporate Android phones last year, or how many of them had to be reset or whatnot. you can find all kinds of different usages of Google Apps or G Suite in your domain. And so we have one launch, which is auditing of mobile things. That's why I was thinking of how many Android devices were lost in your company last year, and can we mitigate that or whatnot? Just keep track of it. So that's a mobile audit. Then we deprecated OAuth 1 in October, and then this coming August, we're going to deprecate the GData admin settings API because there is a new admin settings API that is not GData that has replaced that. So in August 2016, we launched that, and so that's why we're sunsetting the older one in 2017, a year from that time. And that's pretty much it. So like I said, the admin SDK is to help you manage your users, your groups. It also helps you create reports. You can also manage your licenses and also help manage custom orders and subscriptions if you're a reseller. Okay, so those are all the different things that the admin SDK does for you. All right, so now for resources, where can you learn more? If you want to start chasing down this route of trying to make more money by selling to enterprises instead of just consumer users. All right, so these are all videos, I believe. So to learn more about using the G Suite G Suite APIs, that's way my thunder. I have 2 videos on Drive, one on Gmail, one on Calendar, 2 on Sheets, 1 on Slides, and then 1 with both Sheets and Slides. That's the generating slides from Spreadsheet Data 1. And then for AppScript, we have 4. So introduction to it, the hello world, the maps and Gmail example that I just showed you guys, and then another example I showed this morning, which was, for someone like me, part of my job involves me making lots of videos all the time. And so my manager's always asking, so what's the view count on these? How does that look? So I wrote a little AppScript app where I type in the YouTube video ID, I have it in a spreadsheet, and then I go and hunt down all of the view counts for all the videos so that my boss can see how well each of them are doing. And then the last one is auto-generating Google Forms from writing some AppScript code. Because if you did one-off forms, like you're taking a survey from your employees, that's great. But what if your job is to create surveys for all of your customers, right? And you have 5,000 customers. Probably not fun to have to create 5,000 separate Google Forms, right? So you can actually programmatically create them because you want to borrow some questions. You'll have some customers that they should see the same question, right? What do you think of our products? That's a very general one. All of them should see that, but maybe there's a specific question that's only meant for a smaller subset of customers, right? We want to be able to control that. So in that video, I show you how to automatically create forms using AppScript so that you can help automate that process. The main idea with AppScript is to make you more productive, and let you write a little bit of code, not really hardcore code, but just small little apps that help you manage your day-to-day tasks that you can do, because then you could have more free time to do other things like go home early, spend time with your family, things like that that are important. Okay? And makes lots of money. Alright? Make lots of money because now I'm not selling to individual users and hope that I go viral. Instead, I'm selling to corporations where if one company installs your app, boom, you automatically got 50,000, 80,000, 140,000 users, right? That's much better than doing it one at a time. So that's the main motivation for the talk. So as far as question and answers go, so Q&A, short link, and barcode. If you want the slide deck, short link and barcode. And again, I can't tell if those are I's, L's, or 1s. And I can't tell if that's a 0 or a capital O. So you just have to go to barcode, probably the safest thing, or just guess. Okay? And then after you guys have finished taking pictures, I will go to the Q&A document and see if you guys left any questions. Otherwise, I will take live questions. And then in this next hour, I'm going to walk through coding some of this stuff up. I won't be able to stay for the whole hour, just because my flight out of LAX leaves at 5:30 and boarding starts at 4:56. So if I leave here at 4, exactly at 4, I don't think I'll be able to make my flight. So I still have to